Hi, I'm Mark Corcoran. I'm chairman of the Judson Manor House Committee. We are ecstatic about our new partnership with the Artist Archive of the Western Reserve. The inaugural exhibition, City Reveries, now on display in our South Concourse, has brought new energy and life to our community. We wish to thank Mindy Towsley and Kelly Pontoni for bringing their enthusiasm and professional expertise to Judson Manor, and artists whose work will inspire and enrich the lives of our residents. We're thrilled to be joined this afternoon by two artists showcased in the current show, Jennie Jones and Stuart Pearl, both incredibly talented photographic artists. I know you'll enjoy meeting them and hearing them talk about their work. Now I'd like to turn this over to Megan, the Artist Archive's marketing and programming maven, to explain the how-tos you may need for today's Artist Talk. Thank you very much, and thank you for welcome to Judson Manor. Megan?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the talk today. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with Zoom, but we're just going to run through a couple of things. I'm glad you could all join, and sorry we started a minute late, but we were close. So here's a little bit about Zoom. So while you're watching the presentation, the best way to actually view it is going to be in speaker view. So there's going to be an icon that either has a grid, or you can actually have it as a single large one. So the grid's going to kind of look like Brady Bunch, maybe a little bit. Speaker view, the person who's speaking will be large and in charge on your screen. So that's our recommendation there. There's also a couple of functions you need to be aware of. One at the bottom is chat. And this is a way that you can talk to both the panelists and the attendees. There's a drop-down menu, so if you'd like to talk to just the panelists, that's going to be the people presenting today, select that. And then if you select all panelists and attendees, that's going to be everyone who's attending the program. Also, the most important part is that there is a Q&A icon that looks like two thought bubbles. When you go ahead and click on it, you can actually put in questions for Stuart or for Jennie or for anybody. We can actually gather those up at the end. We'll ask them in order, and that way it just kind of keeps it clean and keeps the presentation going. Outside of that, we're really glad to see all of you. The presentation will be recorded and will be available on our website, usually in about a week after we do some formatting. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Mindy, I believe, and she will take it from here.
Well, thanks, Megan. And thank you, Mark, very much. We are so pleased here at the Archives to collaborate with Judson Manor to bring these exhibitions from the collection to the Manor. I do want to say a few words about the Artist Archives for those of you who do not know who we are. We were founded by David Davis and 8 other artists in 1996. We exist in University Circle. Our facility is right across the street, across 123rd Street from the Lakeview Cemetery, and we share a building with the Sculpture Center. Our mission at the Archives is to collect representative bodies of work by Ohio's visual artists and to make this work available to the public through exhibitions and programming like this one. So our mission is really twofold. Collecting and preserving, that's the work that we collect, and also the exhibitions and programming which bring it out to the public. So exhibitions like this one, City Reveries, from the collection, as well as the stories of our archived artists, which are shared to the public through the programming. And another way that we like to share the stories of the archived artists is through a series of short oral history documentaries that we have had filmed by such artists as Chuck Mintz and Ted Sikora. And so a little bit later today, we are going to share one of those for Jennie Jones with you. These films, plus other improvements and maintenance of our storage facility and conservation of the works that are part of our collection, are supported by donations to our Legacy Society. And the Legacy Society has been responsible for improvements to our HVAC system, day-to-day maintenance that we need for different things in the archives, as well as the oral histories. Next, I'd like to introduce our collections registrar, Kelly Pontoni. Kelly has been the person who has really initiated this partnership with Judson. She introduced me to Mark Corcoran, And without her, we wouldn't have this opportunity to share the show and the artists with you today. So I really do want to thank her for that. I hope that this is going to be a long and really happy partnership with Judson, and I'm so pleased to see everybody here today. So Kelly, if you'd like to introduce the artists and share the video, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. I'm Kelly Pontoni. I'm the collections registrar for the Artist Archives. And this is one of my favorite parts of my job, is that we get to have some of the work that we have in the archives. We have 86 archived artists and over 10,000 pieces of work. So to be able to get them out into the community and have this collaboration is really important, special to me personally. Thanks, Mark, for always being supportive of what I do and really supporting this collaboration. So today we have the two archived artists, and first we're going to have Jennie Jones. She was archived in 2000, and we have about 95 pieces of Jennie's. And we did a Archive Speak edition a while back. It doesn't have all of the archived artists, but it has about half of them, and it tells a little story. And I was reading that in preparation for this, and Jennie's page is titled "The Power of Chance." And what really stuck out to me is in that reading, she said she had two aha moments. The first one was when she moved to Cleveland with her husband in 1978. And then the second one was meeting the founder of MoCA, Marjorie Talea. And Marjorie asked her to do a presentation on Cleveland. And Jennie quoted, "I knew nothing about this wonderful city, but started on a journey of research, exploration, and photography." And then in 1985, in her 50s, she started taking photography classes at the Cleveland Institute of Art. So I will show you our video that we have in our oral histories of Jennie Jones. And
I'm conscious of the light, so I'm there all day playing with the angles that I need to get. And I've been there in the night when it's lonely and there's an atmosphere, there's a mood, because it's empty now, you know, it's at night, there's nobody there. And so you're alone with these forms, and you're alone with the smell of the oil and the earth and the rust. I mean, it's a very distinct environment. I was born in Colorado. I started drawing at 3. Started in art school at 11. I majored in art and art history. And I just always have been in the arts in one form or the other, either volunteer or I was with a museum in Milwaukee. Met my husband in Milwaukee, and we moved to Detroit and then to here in 1978. I never studied photography. And when I moved to Cleveland, I was going to be teaching art history. I was teaching the high school students. I was photographing Cleveland because if they were studying Greek architecture, I like to relate it to their own city, their own community. And so I went to Merrill David to pick up some film, and a gal there who later worked for me named Ellen Palmer said, "Jennie, you're really good. You should become a photographer." And I was 50 years old. I never studied photography, and I decided, all right, that's what I will do. That was about as innocent and naive as you could be, but that's what I did. My first big job was Tower City, and I got the job to record it, and I was there 5 years recording it historically, because in order for them to get Habs Hair funding, they had to record every single inch of it, every wall, every outside, inside. And so it was with a 4x5. I had to teach myself that, but it got me going on Cleveland. So one of the early pictures I took was a morning sunrise picture of Soldiers and Sailors Monument in Terminal Tower. That picture, still to this day, is the picture that really gave me the confidence, because I didn't have confidence. The first time I started the black and white, I went down to the Flats Industrial Railroad, and there wasn't a fence around it then. And when I looked through the camera, I thought, this is just insane. I got so excited I couldn't stand it, and I still have the picture. It's another one of my favorites. I think the flats have become my signature. It says everything about Cleveland, and it's got all these magical bridges. There isn't another city in the country that has a museum of bridges running right through the middle of it, and they're spectacular. There was a man named Dewey who ran the Willow Street Bridge, and I was walking across the bridge, and it was the best view of the skyline of Cleveland, and I was thinking to myself, I'd really like to get on top of this bridge. And this man came walking towards me, and he said, "You're a photographer?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you like to go to the top?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And I'm looking at this ladder that goes up the, the side of it. And I'm thinking, I can do that because I climb 90-foot ladders at Tower City, so I can do that. He said, "No, no, no, you stand on the bridge and stay there." And he raised me up. And he did that for many, many years. The bridges get lost in the sky during the daytime, but if you go down there at night and it's a gray night, cloudy, overcast, the sky becomes a light box. And these forms look mammoth and they look impressive, and it really gives you a sense of their strength and how truly magnificent they are. Cleveland's interiors are probably the most precious part of our inheritance in this city, but you can't know about them unless you go into them. I would walk in a room and pick 3 spots, and they'd say, "Well, how do you know it's going to be those 3 spots?" Well, you can teach all the technology you want, but you can't teach an eye. I think the business end is incredibly important. It's not glamorous. It's contradictory to being an artist, but an artist today, I mean, you are going to be in business. It takes more than passion to make money. I was never tired until I got in the car with the equipment packed, and then I thought, "Oh, Lordy, am I tired?" But never when you're shooting. I mean, it's a high. It's just glorious. Visual artists see the world. A lot of people do not see the world. They'll miss so many details, so much about their life. And artists, we see it all.
Wow, you would think that that video was just for this presentation. What a great video. And without any more, I will give it over to Jennie. And Jennie, just let me know when you want me to share the PowerPoint. Wait. You have to unmute. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah,
Got it.
there you go. There you go.
I'm trainable. Yeah, it's exciting that you would show this because I did a lot of commercial work. I did the construction photography for Tower City. I did it for the Key Bay building, and I did a lot of architectural work with Pete Van Dyke and Paul Westlake. I was very lucky to have such outstanding, fabulous men for my mentors and for my jobs. But black and white was my favorite. And my father, I'll have to give you a little background. I was born in Colorado and I grew up in Milwaukee. And I really lived around the Great Lakes the rest of my life. I left Denver when I was 10, and I'd never seen a seagull, and I'd never seen a ship, boats, but never a ship. And so when we got to Milwaukee, and the Great Lakes ships, which originated here, winter berthed in Milwaukee, and Mother would take me down because I've been painting and I've been in art all my life. And she would take a sandwich, and I would paint these ships tied together, like 12 ships, and they would be there in a row. And so when I moved to Detroit, I was also on the Great Lakes, and I came here and I was in paradise. And the flats are particularly interesting to me. I was an only child. My father was an engineer. He worked in heavy industries, dams and generators, and he needed a son badly. But he taught me to fish and to hunt and to fix things. And I went with him into some of these facilities, and we were extremely close. And I'm very grateful to him because he was a great, great guy. This couldn't be better bunch of pictures because of the program we had last week on the bridges, the infamous war bridges of 1836. And I went and looked up the rest of the history of it, and including the Columbus, the war. I mean, it was incredible. So this is great timing. And what I don't think they quite mentioned was that there is every known type of bridge built in the flats. And some of them were the first of their kind, and they were famous around the world. I don't think we quite appreciate how exotic and how fabulous these bridges were. They're in a transition now, and it's getting gentrified, and it's a little heartbreaking for me because I liked it down there when it was lonely and empty, and I did a lot of my shooting at night. In fact, it's not rainy weather but cloudy weather, and I was down there perpetually all the time. I think that it really is important as a photographer. I mentioned light, and light is incredibly important, and your eye is. Our eyes can only see this far, and we can only then see this far. So in all of the art world, in the history of mankind, painting on an object, we always have a limited picture. And we inherited that, obviously, from painting, because it is limited. So you have to put your mind as a photographer into the set that you want to capture something, and you know that you want to frame it and you want it to look good and balanced. And so the art, you're getting taught thirds, you get taught all of these things. And so I had all of that training, and what I didn't have was the technology. I worked with very interesting cameras. I had a Mia R6, which is a medium format camera, and I had a 6.7, and then I finally got a CNR, which was a 4x5, and so I hauled all this stuff around. And Ruth Miller, some of you at Judson will remember Ruth Miller because she was head of that project. And she asked me to compete for the job, and I worked at Tower City for 5 years. And I hadn't even loaded film. I had no idea what I was doing. And I went down with color film, black and white film, and she said, well, can you shoot quickly and go up and do another piece? And I had to download all the film I'd spent all night put in black color film, and then I had to go back, and I was there till 2 in the morning to shoot in competition for that job. And I got the job, much to my amazement. And I loved her to pieces. We'll start with the first slide, I think. Now, this is the Columbus Avenue Bridge, and this is what they talked about last week, which is where all the history of Cleveland is really wrapped up in the Columbus Avenue Bridge. And one of the things that I liked about this going out at night was that you could see it was a gray night. Now, if it had been with no clouds, you would not see the clouds. You would not see the sky. It would be as black as the bridge. So going out with all these city lights reflected down from the clouds, and I always try to include Tower City because to me, Tower City is the signature building of Cleveland. So that was something that was very important. I attached the camera to my car and I went everywhere in my car, and all of these photographs were taken from my car. I had a device that I put on the window. I dressed in black. I wore a baseball cap, and I had my hair up under it. And I sat down there a good part of the night. And my car lights, if you look on the right, you'll see the bushes highlighted. And those were my automobile lights, which I turned on and off when needed. There were 2 bridges there. And now this bridge has been changed. And the interesting thing is that I'll tell you the history of this bridge. It was a wooden bridge originally in 1838, and it was in 1870, it was redone. In 1895, it was iron, and in 1940, this vertical lift went up, and 1914, 1940, I guess, eventually was the vertical lift. And now they've replaced it. And that is very, very exciting because it is now going to be there forever. And this is a major, major bridge. And to me, it was, when you see them in daylight, they're impressive. But when you go at night, they're just monsters. They're huge. They're giants. And I just dearly love them. The next one, please, is Hope Memorial Stagecoach. And all of you know the Hope Memorial Bridge. These were taken when it was cleaned in 1996 for the bicentennial. They're rather dirty again, but it's a fabulous bridge. And it is also a major, major accomplishment. It's a steel bridge. It's pylons because, as you know, we're all shale and sand, and they have a terrible time doing any kind of construction in Cleveland itself. Even the east wing of the library started to sink because water was up that high, which they didn't think was going to be there. So these go down, the pylons themselves, which you see, the big vertical forms, go down 150 feet below the riverbed in order to find solid ground, in order to support this bridge. And the figures are incredibly interesting. Walker was the designer, and the figures were by Henry Herring, who was an artist out of New York. And they are fabulous. And I took these pictures I had a little bitty car, and I went on a Sunday because there was no traffic, and I had to go early in the morning to get them facing one way, and I had to go late in the afternoon to face them the other way because they're face east and west, or they face almost, well, they don't. Yes, they do. And so there are 4 different modes of transportation. And to me, these are the symbols of Cleveland. They're powerful, they're strong, and doing the interior of the council chambers, which I did for the city hall. The people that settled Cleveland were terribly proud of this city, and it's replicated in this, plus the Art Deco effect, and it's really quite fabulous. And I think most of you know that Bob Hope's father worked on this. He was a stonemason. The next one, please. Go down to one here. Let's see. Can you drop one down? I can't get to the next picture. There you go. Thank you. The picture on the right is the bottom underneath of that bridge and the RTA stop. Now, the architect for the RTA stop is Robert Madison, who is an African-American architect, and he's in his 90s, and he's a fabulous architect, and he was very much loved and very respected by the likes of the great architectural people here in this city. And when I went down there, I'm looking because nobody notices this, but he was so careful to fit that station into the arch of the bridge itself. And so I took my car, I drove everywhere. I drove up in the ground up here and got this view because you can see the curve of the roof of the station and the curve of the roof of the Hope Memorial Bridge up above. And any good architect is going to look at the world around him and try to analyze how to place his architecture and how to make it fit in and even echo some of the shapes and the forms. And because I was shooting at night, I think you can see the upper trestles or the upper supports of the bridge. They stand out. Now they're gray concrete. They do not show up in the daytime, but when you see them at night, it's stunning. And film always caused the lights to form stars, which was fun. And they put an artificial memo into digital photography to copy that, because if you do digital photography, you won't get a star shine from the lights like the lights there. And so they've since done that again. On the right is the Lorraine Avenue Bridge, and these were all taken at night. There were a lot of people sleeping down there. They were very safe down there. They were all known by name. I got to know some of them. I even hired some of them to help me, particularly in Tower City. But this looked so impressive. I mean, you would go to Rome, you would go any place to see something as magical and impressive as the interior of the Hope Memorial Bridge. And it's been repaired again, but it's just spectacular. The next one, please. Can you move it up another one, please? Great, okay. The Center Street Bridge is a wonderful bridge. It's a swing bridge, and it was built in 1900, and it has since had the bedding, the floor replaced, and it's had a lot of work done on it. But again, night is just fabulous. You can barely see the ground and the grass in front of it, which is, I don't think you can pull away there anymore, but I liked looking at the 2 bridges together. And again, you see the star formation. And again, it was a gray night. In this case, the clouds were not as thick, and the sky was black, which made a nice balance between the ground and the sky. And that's a very delicate bridge, and I liked it with the flowers and the leaves. It was just compositional, and to me, black and white is really what it's all about. It has no emotion in it. It just has power. You really are forced to look at the lines, the shapes of the trees, the composition of the photograph. Black and white is a very powerful statement. When you add color, you add other things over the black and white, because that structure will always be there. But it doesn't make it as prominent, and it adds emotion and other responses in the color work. So I really love black and white. The one on the right is, again, the Hope Memorial Bridge, and this was infrared, and infrared is very tricky. The one thing, dust adheres to it, and you have a hard time, getting it off the film. But what it does, it photographs the light you cannot see. So this was taken in broad daylight, and the leaves become white, and the reflection places become white, and the blacks become blacker. There's less detail. but it's magical. And this was a early autumn day, but leaves were green. And again, it framed the pylons. To me, these are the magical pieces that I just think are fabulous. And I'd like to lead into Stuart Pearl, because he and I did the museum together, which was great fun. And he has a sense, you're going to find in his work, he and I both have the same great love affair with the flats. I mean, there's just something incredibly that draws you to it. It won't be there forever because it's going to be gentrified, but I'm glad I was there from the 1980s on. And he has a sense of light. One of his favorite lights, which he's going to tell you about, is morning. And he gets up before anybody else gets up, and he gets down there and he gets that light, and it is spectacular. I did more of the late afternoon and I had a different point of view from looking at it, but his work is just masterful. And we did a book together on the museum, and we had an awfully good time. And I think his father was a fabulous artist, and Stuart has inherited that. And you know, I think it's wonderful. So that's it for me. I don't what my time is.
Yep, you're good, Jenny.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
over. I'm sorry.
You're okay. Thank you so much. What a great presentation, and just leading into, like you said, Stuart's work. Stuart Pearl is the Artist Archives Board President. He was archived in 2017, and we have about 117 pieces of his. He had a 40-year career with AT&T, where he worked many different jobs, wore many different hats. He's been a documentation photographer for over 50 years. He graduated from Miami University and got a bachelor's degree in anthropology. And you'll be able to see with the way he presents and his photographs of his storytelling technique. So with that, I will give you Stuart Pearl.
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you for taking a couple hours out of your day and spending it with us here. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun working with Jenny, and I always enjoy talking with her. I've been a kind of a documentary photographer for about 50 years, and also done a lot of weddings and social events in that time too. And I'm going to speak for a little bit, and then I'll switch over to a PowerPoint. You know, documentary photography, I like to shoot you know, anything that I find interesting, objects, subjects, whatever. But what I really like to photograph are projects. You know, like Jenny, you know, we photographers, we're storytellers, and we create a narrative, but instead of words, we use our pictures. And you know, later on today, I'm going to talk about two projects that took a great deal of my time within the past few years that were you know, labors of love. One of them was a very high-tech project costing hundreds of millions of dollars that will benefit the lives of millions of Americans and last decades into the future. In that project, I was a spectator, just kind of recording my photography. And then there was another project that followed that, which was a very low-tech throwback kind of project costing several thousands of dollars and involving just a few dozen people in its construction that will give pleasure to, you know, maybe a few thousand people. And if we're lucky, it'll last 2 years into the future. But, you know, in both, they tell a story, and I'll be getting into that. So let's see if I can switch over to my PowerPoint now. And, oops. Almost. Okay, am I sharing okay?
No.
Nope, it's not sharing.
No, you're not sharing yet.
Okay, let's try this now. How about that?
That's good.
Okay,
Looks
great.
good.
Finally, all right. Well, if you talk to any serious photographer, as Jenny pointed out, it's all about light. Without light, we're nothing. You show me great light, and I'll show you the makings of a potentially memorable, iconic photograph. Anytime I come upon a scene or a composition that I like, I ask myself, where's the light coming from? What kind of light is it? Is it high contrast light? Is it subtle light? Is it shadowed light? Once I determine that, I decide where do I want to stand? What's my point of view going to be? Do I want to, create a mood and try to convey that to the audience there? Okay. All right, and we're not advancing here.
Use your mouse, Stu. That might work.
Whoops. Okay, thank you. That was the key. Always good to have a great tech person on hand here. All right. This is one of my favorite spots. I'm standing in the parking lot of Sokolowski's University Inn, and it's a great place to see the ships coming up the Cuyahoga, and a wonderful place to get a memorable shot of the old Innerbelt Bridge. I had scouted this area for about 6 weeks, and I knew approximately what time in the morning, in the late summertime, when the sun would just start peeking up through the clouds. And I had the good fortune to grab it right after a rainstorm, so you got these nice little reflections off the surfaces and managed to get the shot. So, it's a really cool place, and it's always changing. There's always something different going on there. Okay. As Kelly mentioned, for 4 decades, I worked downtown. And because of that, I had to get up at an ungodly hour every morning. I am not a morning person. I hate that. But one tremendous advantage is I would get to see all this really cool light as it would come up over my beloved flats and bridges. So off to the left here, you can see the wonderful high contrast light shafting across those concrete bridge piers and the undercarriage of the old Innerbelt Bridge. And then off to the right, you've got the brand new structures of the new Innerbelt Bridge. So you've got this wonderful contrast with some beautiful early morning light there. Oops. Now this shot right here, it's kind of a hot mess of detail, and that was intentional. I wanted to create an iconic image of what was going on during the construction of this entire Innerbelt Bridge project. You've got, cranes, trestles, you've got men on sky buckets, you've got, a girder being transported across the river there. If you spend some time looking around, there's this wonderful narrative that kind of leads you around, your eye around for the action, and it really kind of conveys the hustle and bustle that was going on down there. Early on in the project, I very quickly discovered where you're not allowed to go because they have these safety managers everywhere. So I did find out the right contact person, and I phoned that person and sold her on the task of it and convinced her to allow me to go down with her. So we'd meet up about once a month, and she'd issue me a hard hat and a safety vest and glasses. And as long as I followed her rules, she allowed me to get up close to all the nice Tonka trucks and cranes. It was really a blast. I had a wonderful time. Now, as photographers, we have the ability to create our own narrative. A lot of my work was inspired by those wonderful early black and white photographers of the early 20th century that did all this tremendous high steel photography. And you've seen them, people sitting on girders and beams, in New York, Los Angeles, Boston, doing all this wonderful high-rise work. Well, I wanted to do the same thing. Here they were topping off the first bridge of the project with the last horizontal beam. It was pretty well timed, and I knew what the timetable was for that day. So what I did was I positioned myself about 200 feet away, and using a long lens, I trained it on these two gentlemen. That was my point of sharp focus. I got the skyline in the background. So this was my high steel image of what was going on down in the flats. Of course, I hate to tell you, but it was a real fake out. Basically, I was sitting on the ground, and this beam of steel was about 6 feet off that ground. Of course, you don't see that because I cropped it out down below. They just started raising it up, and because of the angle that I was shooting, it gives the appearance of it being a high steel shot. So you see, we can lead the narrative there. We can create what we want you to see. I took a lot of walks across that old Innerbelt Bridge. And let me tell you, it's a little bit terrifying during rush hour, which is when I would usually get there, unfortunately. There was two little steel sidewalks about 15 inches wide on each side. But bridges are not only fun to photograph, but they make great camera platforms. And this allowed me to see what was going on about 200 feet below. Again, this was an early morning shot. Technically, I'm over on the west bank, and there's the ore freighter Buffalo just going up the Cuyahoga, passing under the Norfolk and Southern Railway trestle. You've got one of those brand new bridge piers on the right. And again, you know, you've got this little narrative story going around. Your eye just kind of follows all the angles and the geometry, and you just see all kinds of stuff going on around it. Just one of my favorite shots, really like it. Here's another picture of down in the flats. I tell photographers that, you know, dusk can be a really cool time. You've got this deep blue purple sky that's just starting to tend to go to black. You've got the ambient light of you know, the fading sunlight, and the buildings are just starting to become illuminated. As part of the demolition of the old Innerbelt Bridge, they put those welders up within the structure of the girders and beams themselves to make all these surgical cuts. Because when they set off the demolition charges, you didn't want to have a Jerry Bruckheimer movie where shrapnel would be flying all over the flats and damaging things. You wanted this thing to have a controlled implosion to cause it to go down. So I had the benefit of you know, seeing this cascade of sparks as they flowed during my time exposure here. And again, I've got a really long lens, and I'm sitting in a parking lot of Sokolowski's University Inn. I do a lot of volunteer judging at camera clubs and societies around Cleveland. And one of the things that, you know, I encounter with people just starting out, they'll say, you know, gee, Stu, I've got these areas that I like to do, but I get there and I take pictures, and it's kind of, you know, missing some sort of pizzazz and impact. What am I doing wrong? And I said, well, you're not really doing anything wrong. It's, you know, they want to know, where should I go to take great pictures? And I say, well, it's less about where you should go, but think more about when you should go. You've already got half the battle beat by, you know, finding that special spot, that unique composition. Now you got to think to yourself, gee, I wonder what this would look like maybe 4 hours earlier in the day, or maybe 8 hours later in the day. Also the time of year. You know, anytime you start playing with the clock, you're moving the sun around the sky. You're focusing its rays on different details of you know, the composition. You're getting totally different effects. So it's a matter of experimentation. You know, revisit the same old spot. You know, just keep on shooting, shooting, shooting. Another complaint I'll get from people is they'll say, gee, you know, I went out, you know, shooting today, but the light was really crappy. The sun was behind the clouds. No. You're looking at it the wrong way. As Jennie pointed out early, any overcast day gives you the wonderful blessing of this huge, translucent, soft beam of light just evenly going down and everywhere. This is a gentleman this is a massive cutting machine, and he's literally cutting lines, slicing up the concrete deck of the old Innerbelt Bridge so that when everything's imploded, it'll fall better. And they kept this wetted down so that you wouldn't have dust flying everywhere. Well, all that dust around there, under this nice, soft, diffuse lighting, looks to my eye like somebody just kind of shrouded cotton candy around it, which I think is really cool. Had this been a bright sunny day, that would have just been all blown out and overexposed. You would have never had that nice effect. Also, if you look off into the background there, you see the nice aspect of the smoke going up from the you know, the stacks of the steel mills. You have a nice tonal valuations of coloration in the flats there. There's an artistic term I learned from my sister, who's an art teacher. It's called atmospheric perspective. The human eye sees close in foreground details in sharp relief. Typically things off in the distance are a softer focus. I'm always on the lookout for abstracts. And one day during an early morning walk across the old Innerbelt Bridge, I just happened to look down just as this workman in the lower left-hand corner was walking by his pile of raw materials, casting a giant shadow. And I figured, wow, this is really kind of cool. It's really weird looking. This was originally a color photograph, but there was very little color in it. Color was not important. Color would have been a distraction. The impact here was the geometry, the high contrast, the shadows, his shadows. So I converted it to black and white, and that's what you see here. Intellectually, we know what this is, and color suited it well. The way I shot it, though, again, I used a long lens, causing the background to be blurred out of focus, just focusing on what appears to be some alien creature at his task, surrounded by these angry, buzzing bees. But nonetheless, I was really pleased with the results here. Now, my next project, this is the low-tech project that's not going to last too long that I spoke about. I was back in August of this year, and I had the absolute pleasure of working with a sculptor by the name of Patrick Doherty and his son Sam. And they build these things called stickworks structures all over the world. He's now built over 300 of these in just about all the continents. And I got to participate in construction of number 311 here at the Holden Arboretum in Kirtland, Ohio. Originally, it was supposed to be at the Cleveland Botanical Gardens down in University Circle, but because of COVID in the confined area, they figured they better move it out to Kirtland. Now, I mentioned on the Innerbelt Bridge project, they used thousands of tons of concrete and steel. And there I was a spectator documenting what was going on. Here I was an active participant, which I felt lent a really wonderful dimension to a project. It gave me a certain intimacy with what was going on. These were all of our raw materials here. This was 6 tons of willow branches and twigs that we had trucked in from Fredonia, New York. And those are all my friends and fellow volunteers at Holden and our volunteer coordinator. And on that very first day of work, we were all strippers. As strippers, it was our job to strip off all the leaves from the twigs, which then makes them a lot easier to weave through the project. And as volunteers, we were required to sign up for 3 4-hour shifts. And because I knew I wanted to make kind of a story out of this, I took a day at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and I figured that would give me the ability to tell a better story. While we were busy stripping, Patrick and his son were drilling 93 post holes, which became the foundations of the stickworks construction on the knoll here. They then pounded in these steel stakes, and then they took the larger diameter willow branches, bundled them together, packed them into the holes, threw dirt in on top of them, wound them together, and then that became part of the structure with doorways and windows and corridors there. By the end of that first day, it looked like our grassy structure had sprouted a bunch of hair plugs. Patrick allows 21 days for every construction project there. And okay, this was the end of day 1. And then when I came back for my day 2, which was probably about midway, here you can see that scaffolding has been erected. This whole structure is about 50 feet wide and I think 35 feet deep and about 15 feet high. To get to those higher parts, it's necessary for Patrick to erect that scaffolding. He does the heights, I don't. Here's a little bit of detail here. Now, Patrick's got a real strong sense of the aesthetic. And once he put up all the doorways and the windows and the framework, and you'll see how they're curved and very beautifully done. It was our job, the volunteers, to fill in the gaps in between. And training was basically on the job. And that first day of work had a pretty worthless first hour when I discovered all the wrong things that you don't do, but you copy what your buddy is doing, and then you very quickly learn there. So we got the hang of it, weaving, and it's like you're hemming a giant skirt that's 50 feet wide. You pick a 10-foot long branch, and then you kind of, push it through, and then you go to the other side and you pull it and you twist it and turning, all trying to keep within his curved aesthetic there. Again, I'm always on the lookout for abstracts, and by mid-construction here, it looked like somebody had plunked down a giant beehive. And again, I could have done it in color, but here it looks a little more mysterious in black and white. So that was how I decided to convert it there. Again, Patrick's got this really strong sense of the aesthetic. And this was on my last day, which was, I believe, 2 days before we opened it to the public. And you can see the wonderful way he's just got all these spirals just kind of weaving around the top of the walls there. And as they're kind of curving and swooping and whatnot. And his instructions to us were to, naturally clean everything up. And anytime we saw a branch sticking out of it, we would have to go and snip that off so it wouldn't poke anybody and would look better. And that's what my friend Al Cowger is doing in the lower right-hand corner there. He's also a fellow Holden volunteer and one of our board members here at the Artist Archives. And what we would do is we would paint those stick ends. We had plastic water bottles. We would cut them in half, fill it with water, add dirt, take a stick, stir it around until we had mud, and then we would use that stick and we would literally paint those ends with that, and that's what Al's doing there. When Patrick is finished with every project, he gives it a name. And this one he decided to call Tilt-A-Whirl. And that's an homage to the old carnival ride that I'm sure many of us enjoyed in our youth and even well into our adulthood here. And I thought this was really serendipitous and kind of meant to be, because 50 years ago, my father, Moses Pearl, who's also an archived artist and part of the exhibition that's going on at Judson right now, he painted this wonderful watercolor called Tilt-A-Whirl. And this is now part of the permanent collection of the Canton Museum of Art and was recently shown in their Americana exhibition. So I thought that was, kind of bittersweet and just, one of those things that I guess was kind of meant to be. Well, shortly after this last day, we opened this to the public, and little kids immediately found this was a wonderful place to play hide and seek. All the little passages and crevices and windows and doorways, they would just go running through them and hanging on the edges and pulling the sticks out, and then we'd have to go back and put them back in and everything. But it's a great place for kids to go and explore. Not only that, it's a wonderful place for adults to visit. And if you want, you too can have one of these set up in your backyard. All you need is $35,000 plus expenses. And then you got to figure out a trained workforce to do this. Basically, this has an approximate lifespan of about 2 years. No preservatives were added, no paint, no varnish. It's all natural. They're all dead branches. Nothing is live here. So there's still time to come. We welcome you for a visit and, stop in and take a look and enjoy Stickworks, otherwise known as Tilt-A-Whirl. Thank you very much.
Great. That was great. And I did put in the chat the Holden Arboretum website, and that is still on view. And I will now turn it over to Mindy.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Jenny. Beautiful work, both of you. So we're going to start the Q&A. I'm going to open this up. I have a question from Linda Brown. I think this is for Jenny. What does label Stagecoach mean on the Hope Bridge photo? A size or style of photo? Okay, I think that referred to the title, Linda, and what the icon was holding. So.
Yes, because this was a very automotive city, a very heavily industrial city, even pre-Detroit. He chose the 12 versions of transportation as his motif. And there's a hay wain, and there's a stagecoach, there are 4 trucks, and there are 3 different cars, and and the horse and buggy, which became the car because they took the chassis and put a motor on it, is what it was. But that was to represent the industrial greatness and future activity and dramatic contribution that Detroit made. So each of them have a different mode of transportation.
I think the next question is also for you, Jennie. Could you comment on digital versus film photography, your preference and why?
Well, I think, photography is just another way, it's another medium, like watercolor, oil painting, whatever it is, it's just another medium. But in this case, it actually can capture reality. It's always going to be from a point of view because you always have a photographer. And in a lecture I gave, I showed a picture of a painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware. I think you all know that. And there's a cap-up photograph at the landing of Normandy. And you can know fully well that George Washington didn't cross the river all dressed up with the flags and the buttons and the bows and all of that. It just wasn't reality, but it's a historic, quote, painting. So black and white, to me, is much more, I prefer it, all right? The difference between digital and film is that you had film and you have to go through a chemical process. You have to expose the film to light and process it in chemistry in the darkroom. Digital does all of that for you. It is very, very different. And the really different sense, the only thing that's different in the shooting of it, because the composition is the same, your approach is the same, you're going after light. It's all about light either way. The only other difference is that digital, if you're shooting film, you shoot for the light. And you all heard who was the photographer that did all the El Capitan, Stuart. Who am I talking about?
Oh, Ian Adams?
No, yeah, Ian Adams. No, Ian no.
Oh, Ian.
Yeah, El Capitan.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, he was world renowned, and he did a mathematical calculation so that you could capture all the details from pure white to black. And you would shoot for the shadows on that. Am I saying that right? Yes. And
Yep.
you had to overexpose to get the shadows. Now, if you're shooting with digital, you're going to reverse that technique. So if I shot the way I was going to shoot with film on digital, all of my light, and all the things would be overexposed. So there's a technique that is different, but it's all about light, and it's how it's captured. And that's mathematical. It's a miracle to me, but it's the digital is mathematical. I'm not mathematical, but the computer knows all about that, and every little thing has been assigned a color, and it puts it all together, and it's total magic. But the same thing, they're both light. They're all about light. There's no difference in that. The only difference is in your exposure to black or to white. And that is the only technical difference. Otherwise, you shoot them the same, you treat them the same.
I just remember the name. I cheated and I looked at my bookshelf. Ansel Adams.
Ansel Adams, that's what.
Yeah, Ian Adams is another excellent photographer, and he's a very good.
I can forget things. Anyway, Ansel Adams did that, and it was followed. He had a following that's worldwide. But he figured out that mathematical balance to get exactly what you want, and you reverse it for digital. So really, it's just the light, the handling of light that is the difference. That's it. Everything else is the same.
Thanks, Jennie. Great
Yeah.
answer. I think this next question is for Stuart because it refers to the sculptures, and it's also from Linda. The sculptures were not named until after the construction, not named during the planning process. Were they created on spot or designed ahead of time?
Oh, for Stickworks, I believe.
Works, I think she's referring to.
Yeah, it's my understanding that after he's done with a structure, he gets kind of a sense for, I guess, what it reminds him, because we would, he'd give us an afternoon break, usually around 3 o'clock because we were dying of the heat and whatnot, which was kind of fun because we'd go over in the tent, we'd sit down and with our water bottles, and we would talk art and we'd talk sculpture and we'd kind of pick his brains. And I flat out asked him, I said, so Pat, when you come to a place like this, do you have like a templated blueprint of what you want to do? And he kind of danced around it, and which I understand why. He knows what works. He knows that in certain climates, like our climate, you don't put a roof on it because it's just going to hold the snow and it's going to rot out faster. You make it an open prospect there. But he put it on the knoll, and its appearance is defined by its environment. Like that place out at Holden, you've got fir trees off in the distance in the back. There's a lot of negative space around it. And, there's a bluebird field off on one side and that. So, he just probably talked it over with Sam and came up, and they probably brainstormed it. And they probably said, well, let's try this out. And then at the end, they looked at it, and I'm guessing just kind of came up with that idea. So.
Thanks, Stuart. We've got a question from Peter Babula, and I think this might be directed to both photographers. Have either of you considered drone photography? It seems in Peter's estimation that maybe this would be a good fit for you.
Jenny, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Pete Green, jealous of this era and youth. At 88, I cannot walk anywhere right now, and I just broke my arm 6 months ago, or 3 months ago, or a month ago. I'm fine. But I cannot do what I did. I climbed ladders. I had helicopters. I hung out of them. I did all these crazy things. And I would have used a drone, I can assure you. And the last session that Channel 3 had, where they had those pictures of Cleveland up, they were all taken with a drone. They were on the river, folks. They were from places you can't get. And I would have, of course, I would have used a drone. I mean, I think it's fabulous. I went and stood on Society Building to photograph that a twilight of Tower City, and I was on the steel plates of the flooring because there wasn't anything, and I got permission to go up there because I was working there in the first place, and I got those pictures of Tower City. But I would have definitely used a drone. Absolutely.
I would love to get into drone photography, but sadly that would be another financial black hole to fall into. Yeah. And not quite independently wealthy, so I don't know how that would work. But yeah, I've seen some incredible work, and I wouldn't mind going along with somebody who knows nothing about light or photography, and maybe direct him and kind of collaborate or something. But like anything else, so the cost keeps on coming down, and perhaps one of these days I could get into a project, because remember, I like projects that could cost justify purchase. So always have an open mind.
The closest I came was the Goodyear blimp. They took me up. I had it for myself for 5 hours, which I didn't know I was going to have. I thought I was going to be pressed and a whole bunch of people. And that picture overlooking the flats from the south side, that was taken from the Goodyear blimp. And that'll give you an idea. And I mean, and I went out in these little mosquito things that were called helicopters. It was just a plastic pod with a propeller on the top of it, and no doors. You don't stick your camera out, but you don't want any doors, and you lean forward so you don't get the constant vibration. You try not to touch anything that except your seat and your feet, so it doesn't get motion, and you have to shoot at a higher speed. But it's fabulous stuff. I would do it. We would both.
Jenny,
I can't afford it either. It's ridiculous.
Oh, well, maybe if the price comes down, both you guys, I would be interested to see if you started using a drone.
Sure can do it. I can't.
Yeah. Our next question is also for you, Jenny. Your work captures the essence of the late Industrial Revolution, which is epitomized by bridges. This is a question by Andrew Reach. Did you look at Margaret Burke White's work, and if so, how has it influenced your own?
It's very interesting because I'd heard of Margaret Burke White, but I really wasn't thinking of Margaret Burke White when I did that. Her brother actually bought one of my pieces, which made me just incredibly. He lived here, which was incredible. But I think I was an art historian. I ended up with the museum 11 years. I majored in art history. I started out as an artist and majored in art history. And I was more interested in the 1920s, 30s, some of the paintings and the things that were taking place then, and the shapes and the excitement of buildings in New York and all of this stuff. I've always been attracted to that. And but yes, I love her work. And but she was not my initial influence, not really. What was happening in Cleveland was what really I mean, I love adventure. I love excitement. And so I was a crazy enough lady. I got hired at Tower City for 5 years, and I did the gateway construction, and I did the Key Bank building and the engineer building. And then I just was, because of my art historic background, I was very knowledgeable on architecture. So it was a natural for me to be really in love with buildings and do buildings. And I think that's why Pete Van Dyke and Paul Westlake liked, they knew we could discuss style and where they were coming from. And so that really was my background. But I adore Margaret Burke-White. She was one of my heroes.
Great. Thank you, Jenny.
But not an influence.
So I just want to remind everybody that we are recording the presentation, and it will be available in about a week up on the Artists Archives website, which is www.artistsarchives.org. If you Google it, you'll find it also. I'd like to thank everybody, and it is 5 o'clock, so I'm going to turn the presentation back to Mark Corcoran. You'll have to unmute yourself, Mark. Oh, Mark's having trouble unmuting himself.
There.
There you go.
Okay. I just want to thank everybody, our extraordinary artists who shared so much insight with us. Mindy, Kelly, Megan from the Artist Archive, thanks for making this possible. This is the first of many delightful afternoons we'll spend together, and we certainly look forward to it, and thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, artists. Thank you, Judson Manor. Everybody who's watching from Judson Manor, thank you so much for participating. So we'll see you all later.
Thank you for having us.
We loved it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.